Angus, Arvind, is the food safety quality regulatory manager for Prairie Farm Food, so he keeps all the food safety programs and procedures implemented and followed. We've got Dan Skanoka. Dan works with Prairie Farm Food in the capacity of sales and logistics coordinator, making sure that the product goes to customers as per order. Shauna works in accounting for Prairie Farm Foods, make sure all our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed and everything balances at the end of the month. Joan works as a marketing team lead for Prairie Farm Foods, so helping us tell the Prairie Rancher story, the Prairie Farm Food story. And then we also have representatives from our communications agency, BART Communications from Ontario visiting. So Mr. Brian Clausen, and President for BART Communications, and Ray Marjoram, CEO for BART Communications. So again, for today's agenda, we'd like this to be interactive and just ask lots of questions, help us lead this. So we'll start off with Prairie Farm Foods, just introducing Prairie Farm Foods, so who Prairie Farm Foods Incorporated is. So Prairie Farm Foods is a meat harvesting, processing, and marketing company. That is, so the company's goals would basically be to facilitate and work with farms that produce meat following production protocols and production standards that produce the most nutritious product possible, and the production of the product has a enhancing environmental impact. So we're regenerating environmental impact done meaning soil biology, so the production of food either can be produced to where it enhances and improves soil biology, or if we're not careful, it can actually degrade soil biology. So we want to design standards around how the meat is produced that will produce the most nutritious product. The most nutritious product is also the most flavorful product, and produce it in such a way that the environmental impact is actually, we feel with beef production, we can make the environmental impact be an enhancing impact instead of a degrading impact. So a marketing company whose goals are to facilitate the production. So Prairie Farm Foods doesn't produce beef, but Prairie Farm Foods works with farms that do produce beef according to a standard that Prairie Farm Foods has set out for them.
Can I ask you, what animals are using, Angus?
Yes, on the beef program, it would be predominantly Angus genetics. So we'll get into more of a genetic discussion later on in the presentation. So Prairie Farm Foods as a company operates a CFIA licensed abattoir, so a CFIA licensed meat facility. Phase one of the facility is the capacity to harvest from live animal to sealed primal cuts, or to boxed beef, boxed pork, or boxed bison. Phase one of the facility has been operational now since February of 2021. So it's a fairly young company. Prairie Farm Foods is a fairly young company. Phase two of Prairie Farm Foods would be processing capacity to take primal cuts right to end user cuts. So grinding, smoking, cooking, sausage production, bacon, ham, slicing would be phase two of the facility. Phase two of the facility is currently under construction. We don't have it operational yet. Hoping to have it operational by August and September of this year. Then it will be completely built out. So it's the abattoir component of Prairie Farm Foods. And then Prairie Farm Foods operates meat brands, multiple meat brands. So examples of meat brands would be, like I mentioned, Prairie Farm Foods would design standards on how we ask farmers to produce beef too, that are designed to produce the most nutritious beef and have an enhancing environmental impact. So they're auditable standards. They go through an annual third-party audit. Any farms that would participate in that to ensure that the farms are producing the beef according to the standards.
Question about the standards. Is there like kind of is it a set standard, like this cow needs to weigh or needs to be graded at this, or is it you take it and it's this, give or take? Is there any wiggle room there, or is it very precise?
The standards are very precise around how the animals are grown.
Okay.
So the type of animal, what they're allowed to be fed, what they can't be fed, how the feed that grows the animal is grown. The Prairie Farm Foods program is a program that is grown without the use of added hormones, without the use of antibiotics, so the standards would disallow those, the use of those substances. If an animal needs to be treated with an antibiotic due to an injury, it is removed from the program. It is not sold under the Prairie Ranchers brand.
Okay.
And then it is also a double A or higher program for intramuscular fat. So all the carcasses are federally graded, and only double A and higher carcasses would fit the standard. If there are carcasses that don't catch that grade, they would be marketed elsewhere.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Who sets the standard?
The standards around how the animals are grown, the standards around how the animals are grown were actually set by Prairie Farm Foods. So Prairie Farm Foods designed the standards as to how we need these farms to grow animals. So what designs the standards is the goal is to end up with the most nutritious product, and we'll get into discussions on how that impacts later on in the presentation, and to have an enhancing environmental impact. So just a second, sir. So the standards were designed by Prairie Farm Foods, us, in conjunction with a third-party auditing company that is recognized by CFIA. So the standards are designed into an auditable standard. CFIA controls labeling regulations, plants at this site. So if the Prairie Ranchers program is a grass-fed program, it's a no antibiotic, no growth hormone program. In order for us to label that on the box, we have to prove to CFIA with the standards, with audits for the farms that produce the beef, and then CFIA allows the labeling. It is basically how it works. There is, in Canada, so for grass-fed, Canada doesn't have a grass-fed standard. The United States has a grass-fed standard, there's a grass-fed association that would need to endorse the grass-fed claim, but in Canada, there is no grass-fed standard. Did you have a question, sir?
I was just concerned about how is this monitored? How do you know, and you mentioned an audit, so I guess, how do you monitor your farmers?
Okay, so the farms would produce according to the standard. The farms would be audited at a frequency that is decided upon by the auditing agency that we work with. The auditing agency is recognized by CFIA to perform these meat brand audits. Part of the audit as well is when animals change, so if animals are sold as young animals to another farm to be finished for the Prairie Rancher standards, there's a set of affidavits and paperwork that goes with the animals. These producers are signing off these affidavits, solemnly declaring that they have followed these pieces. Is basically the best that can be done. And the producers as well, I'll mention, that produce for Prairie Ranchers program are partner producers. So they're not a producer deciding to market their cattle to Prairie Ranchers today and not next year. The partnership is stronger than that. The partnership is of producers that produce for us the partnership is strong, and these producers are remunerated fairly for the animals that they supply, following the standards. So that is basically how that would work. And usually so partner producers will usually be supplying young cattle to be finished into fat steers to the finishing farm.
Roughly how many finishing farms do you work with?
We work with a handful of farms, so Will manages that. I'd say we work with one finishing farm. At the moment is one finishing farm, which is actually our own farm, or a subsidiary of the company that owns Prairie Farm Foods. So that is the finishing farm. But the partner farms are usually cow-calf producers that produce young animals to the finishing farm to be finished following the standards. So that's just this meat brand component is a part of the Prairie Farm Foods business model. These brands live within Prairie Farm Foods. Prairie Farm Foods facilitates the production of the animals according to standards and the sales to distributors. So we sell through a wholesale model, through a direct consumer model, that we're just growing in the process of growing the direct consumer model in terms of market, in terms of understanding the further processing of the market. So we started with inside a provincial plant, and we started selling to the local community. The brand we sold under was called The Meat Shop. It became termed as The Meat Shop at Canadian Culinary. That was the business name that we operated under. And the brand strategy at that time was we followed a branded house strategy. So these that's why there's the similarity of these treatments. So everything was branded to Pine Haven. So it was Pine Haven. This was our further processed, like our meat, our sausage, bacon, our further processed brand, our beef brand, our pork brand, and then we did the provincial plant did poultry as well. So we followed that concept at the time. It fit our organization better due to the size of the organization. The provincial plant grew, sales grew, and evolved into the organization deciding to operate at a federal level, CFA inspected level, and larger amounts of throughput. And in 2017, we started construction of this facility, and then decided that those business operations needed to run as Prairie Farm Food. So that's where Prairie Farm Foods Incorporated was born, was in 2017 when we started the construction of this facility. So this facility was under construction from 2017 to 2021. We started operating phase 2, like I said, in 2021, and then we're just now finishing the construction. Started operating phase 1, 2021, now finishing the construction of phase 2. And on the branding, we're changing the brand concept to where instead of following the branded house, we're becoming more, or we're following a house of brands concept. So the brands will live within Prairie Farm Foods, but they'll all be distinctly different. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And I was just wondering, like, the product between the upper grass-fed premium beef and then the lower, which is similarly described, the product has been, has stayed the same, but the brand has changed, it looks like.
Yes,
Okay.
it's basically what's happened. And as well, part of what we're currently strategizing on is what is the best way to operate. Like if the company sells a direct-to-consumer model and a direct-consumer brand and then a wholesale brand, we are moving in a direction of the wholesale brand being its own distinct, unique brand and not being the same brand that has been sold to direct-to-consumer, because it's two different markets, a couple of different marketplaces. So we're in the process at the moment of fleshing that out and understanding that and just adapting to the strategy to the size of the companies it's growing and evolving in.
Can I ask a question? If I was a farmer and I'm growing, or I'm getting cattle, why would I want to come to you with all these regulations? Are you paying significantly more for the cattle than other companies?
Yes.
Other abattoirs?
Yeah, we would need to remunerate more than, like,
Okay.
for producing according to the standard than for beef that are not grown according to the
Okay.
standard. But, so in essence, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to say that as a producer, there's an education per component that Prairie Farm Foods offers. And Prairie Farm Foods' producer group offers to new producers that are interested that will result in you as a rancher producing more beef per acre, producing more forage per acre because of grazing practices and protocols that we're learning as a group. So you produce more beef per acre to market.
Okay.
So there's multiple, could be a few reasons on why producers are interested.
Okay.
And not all producers are interested.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and usually a producer is somebody that owns cows and produces young animals. So cows in the industry by default are all run off of grass and forage rations. Usually grain, there's no grain fed to cows. On the cows and calves, usually there's no growth hormone, there's no antibiotic. So the standards for cow-calf producers are actually quite easy to meet. The grass and forage finishing, where it becomes more difficult, is when the grass and forage feeding becomes more difficult for producers is on the finishing stages. So the finishing stages, if we want to stick to grass and forages only, we now have a situation where we are aiming to produce high quality beef in terms of intermuscular fat. Beef with high levels of intermuscular fat means beef that's consumed a lot of energy intake per day. And we're now doing it with grasses and forages only, which are less dense in energy per volume. So it takes selecting the right genetics and selecting the right forages to be able to be successful to produce AAA beef from grass and forage only. Because our program aims at producing high quality beef in terms of intermuscular fat levels.
So at the start, you said that you produced beef, pork, and bison. Are there the similar standards for your pork and bison, or is those standards different?
No, the standards would completely different.
Okay, but like under the same kind of model as like they're like pig farmers and bison ranches are given their specific standard, or is it?
So we don't produce, so my comments at the start were that the plant was licensed to process.
Okay, just licensed.
Beef, bison, and pork.
Okay.
The plant processes a lot of bison. But that leads us into kind of our next discussion. So another part of the PFF business model is Prairie Farm Foods, the CFA slaughter facility, supplies custom meat processing, harvesting and processing services at a CFIA level, so licensed for distribution basically anywhere in the world to other meat brands. So these are just some examples of other meat brands that we work with. So some of you may have or may not have seen these brands in the marketplace. Canadian Rangeland Bison is a fairly common bison brand in Western Canada. So in the case of Rangeland Bison, I'll just use them as an example. They sure would be okay with that. So Rangeland Bison as a brand is owned by a group of bison producers. So they produce bison. And then they market bison. They market bison internationally. They have weekly orders going to Europe. Prairie Farm Foods works with Rangeland where we will harvest those bison for them. So Prairie Farm Foods will receive the live animal, do the harvesting of the animal. Harvesting is just a nicer word for the slaughter process. And fabricate those carcasses into final cuts following a EU standard in the case of bison, and then facilitate all the export of that product. But the sales are done in the EU end, the international market sales are done by Rangeland and its representative. Prairie Farm Foods as the plant is simply following their instructions on where to ship the product.
Okay.
So in summary then, the PFF business model, we'll be talking about two different brands here. We're talking about, so first we're talking about the PFF, meaning Prairie Farm Foods business model, the company, and then we'll get into the beef brand. So to summarize, the Prairie Farm Foods business model works with partner farms, runs branded meat programs, and sells a branded beef pork program, operates a CFIA licensed facility, and offers custom harvesting service to other meat brands. So that's in summary what Prairie Farm Foods Incorporated does and stands for.
Yeah, everybody understands that pretty well, the services that they deliver to, other meat producers who need abattoir services and certification for CFIA, and then the distribution service as well. There's a huge need for that across Canada.
Yeah, there's got a question.
So these brands, who are they distributed by?
To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. We would get you in touch with the owners of these brands. to learn that, to understand that.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I missed the name of the, distributor that you said that the PFF brand is distributed by. Are they
Two Rivers,
Are they a national distributor?
no, they distribute in Vancouver only.
Vancouver only.
Well, Dan, you can help us with that. See it, Two Rivers' distribution is where?
BC, all of BC.
North Vancouver, yeah.
Yeah, they're located in North Vancouver, but they ship on the islands, Okanagan. They're provincial, so they can only ship within BC.
Okay, and the DTC, the direct to consumer, how far are you shipping that?
So the direct-to-consumer at this point in time, because we're very early in our journey with direct-to-consumer, we sell through our farm store only. We've had our farm store operating for 20-some years.
Okay,
But we're now working on developing a direct-to-consumer brand. And shipping that, we'll start with Alberta, but our plan is to go across Canada.
okay,
And work with, the plan at the moment for distribution is to work with third-party warehouses and just the main courier companies,
mhm,
to, like UPS or Courier, that'll pick up at a third-party warehouse that are strategically placed across the country and just deliver right to people's homes,
Okay.
consumers' homes.
so just to summarize, because I wanna make sure I got it all right. PFF is distributed wholesale in Vancouver, or in BC. Direct to consumer right now is starting locally, we're gonna branch out to Alberta, the goal is that we're gonna get national as you grow and evolve, right? And then these other brands are being distributed nationally by a variety of distributors,
Yes,
that we can reach out to them to figure out.
yes.
Perfect.
We can certainly get you contact information for these brands. We're not involved in the sales and the marketing of these brands at all. We simply supply harvesting services to these companies
Perfect.
according to like a fabrication schedule that they would supply to the plant with how they want products cut and palletized, and then logistics arranged for that. Usually two distribution companies.
Great, thank you.
So that would be CFI, that would be Prairie Farm Foods in a nutshell. Hopefully that gets everybody. So Prairie Farm Foods is the parent company, that's where these brands live in, operates the plant, operates the brand, and supplies customers.
Yeah.
So from here, for the next part of the discussion, we'll go into the Prairie Ranchers grass-fed beef line. Yeah. Who are these guys? And why aren't they getting out of the way and letting those cattle eat? Are you with Kevin Costner? I've heard that called an Al Capone act. Oh, this guy, he's got a trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I was gonna say.
We're like, it gets
the
cold on
Alberta
food.
version of Rick
So, the Prairie Ranchers beef brand, so we've discussed basically where the brand lives, how the animals are growing, where the meat is sold to. We've gone through all of that. In this presentation, and for this discussion, we thought we would discuss more on why we would grow beef according to the standards that we've designed to grow that beef. If we try and take a real deep dive there, and we'll see where we get to and understand. There's a lot of information here. We could go quite in depth, but that'll be up to the group to understand. So when Prairie Farm Foods set out to develop its beef brand, so Prairie Farm Foods, through one of its subsidiary companies, I guess I'll start and say that it owns land, acres, so the ability to produce food. So we like to look at it as it stewards acres, a resource that we steward and we use to grow food. So we can use the resource in multiple ways to grow foods. How will we use it? So those are questions we asked ourselves. So, and then we developed standards around them. So if we really dig deep and we ask ourselves, what is important about food? What actually is the objective of food production agriculture? What are we setting out to produce? What matters, what maybe doesn't matter as much? We ask ourselves those questions, we come up with 3 different answers. So, sorry, Joan, you may have to help me out here, I think I lost myself. No, hold on a second. So the first objective of food production agriculture, or why we would produce food, is for nutrition. So so food nourishes. We all need food, we understand that, that's simple. So the goal of food production agriculture would be to produce food that is the most nutritious, that has the greatest ability to nourish. Food nourishes us, fuels us, feeds us. Well-nourished bodies are healthy, they're functioning, their disease is prevented. We can all understand on why, like, nutrition is just very, very important. And then if we dig really deep in trying to understand nutrition and why is some food more nutrient dense than other food, and what can we do to make sure that it's nutritious as possible. If we dig really deep there, it takes us to soil and soil biology. So nutrition within food, so its ability to nourish, its phytonutrient richness, there's different terms that can be used, are a result of soil biology. So life within the soil basically is what nutrient dense or nutritious food is a result of. We do not have nutritious food, nutrient dense food without soils that are biologically very alive and well and thriving. So we're looking for a production standard that produces food, the most nutrient dense food, and then at the same time we want that production standard to actually produce soil. We want it to grow more topsoil, because that topsoil is really the nutrition producing mechanism of the earth. There is none outside of that. Nutrition is all from soil, it's all about soil. I can't stress that enough. So when we're saying we want to grow soil, then I mean we grow soil deeper. I'm not thinking we grow soil this way. We can't grow more land this way, but we can certainly grow soil deeper. Okay, so at this point in time of the discussion, the main takeaway points here are that we want optimal nutrition, and at the same time, as we're producing the nutrition, we want to actually enhance the nutrition producing mechanism, which is actually the soil and the biological life within the soil. And we understand that different food production methods can enhance soil. There's food production methods we can grow beef in such a way that we can actually degrade soil biology. So that is a reason for setting up the standards and producing the way that we produce. And then the third important factor as well is food production systems are businesses. We need to recognize that, and businesses need to make profit. Businesses need to be economically sustainable if they're to continue intergenerationally. We can't get away from that. So we do what we do within the financial constraints that exist. This needs to work as a business, or else it won't continue, and then it's not providing the benefits to our customers either. So these are the 3 main objectives that we're trying to reach when we're producing food, and the Prairie Ranchers the Prairie Ranchers brand is a food production system. And the standards are designed around achieving these objectives. Most nutritious food, grow soil at the same time, sequester huge amounts of CO2 at the same time. That's what these standards are designed to do. So this discussion will go very deep down that rabbit hole. If it's going too deep, you can let me know when you get to it. So if we ask ourselves back to how can we achieve these objectives of most nutritious food and build soil at the same time and achieve economic sustainability so it can continue, the answer for farms and for ranches, it boils back down to operating a farm or a ranch in such a way that does not disregard any of the 5 principles of soil. So, wrong button. So there's 5 principles of soil health. So these are principles. They are not theories. They are not ideas. They're principles. They're written in stone principles. So if we're looking for soils to be biologically enhanced, if we're looking for maximum amount of organic matter, housing maximum amount of microorganisms, then we need to be following these 5 principles. So we boiled it down to 5 principles that our production systems need to follow in order to equal soils that are biologically very enhanced. So I'll just go through the principles. So principle number 1 is our food production system do not disturb, minimize or eliminate mechanical or chemical disturbance. So mechanical disturbance would be tillage. So if we run tillage tools through soil, we're basically running a steel shank from a cultivator through soil at about this level. So we're disrupting biology's house. So soil biology lives within here. It can live within the first up to 5-10 feet of topsoil. That's where soil biology lives. So if we're running a tillage tool through, we're basically causing a lot of disruption to soil biology. So we're going to end up just killing a lot of it off. And then soil biology's default position is to regenerate itself. What we need to do is just eliminate the degradation of it. Stay out of its way, it'll regenerate itself to where it needs to it'll regenerate itself to optimal. So principle number 1, again, eliminate or minimize tillage. Principle number 2 is the soil needs to be covered all the time. Cover. If like bare soil is naked, depleted, degrading soil, it loses life, it loses carbon, it needs to be covered. Principle number 3 is diversity. We need a lot of diversity amongst plant species. So plant species growing on that soil, we need cool and warm season grasses, cool and warm season broadleaves. We need a lot of diversity, as much diversity as possible. See, we see this part of the plant up here when we're looking at grasslands or crops. We see this part of the plant up here, but there's the root system that goes down as well. So different plants play a different function within this ecological system. So we need diversity here. Principle number 4 is we need to keep green living plants and roots growing for as long in that growing season as we can. So as early in the spring to as late in the fall, we need green living plants and roots there. Green living plants and roots are the green carbon pathway that feeds soil biology. So what this biology needs is in the atmosphere up here. CO2 and its liquid sun. The only way it's feeding that biology is through the green carbon pathway. So this plant will sequester it out of the atmosphere in a gas form. It'll be a liquid through the stem of the plant, and it will have liquid carbon exudating, liquid CO2 exudating out the tips of these roots and feeding soil biology, building soil biology, feeding soil biology. So we call this term enhanced photosynthetic capacity. So green living for as long as the season as absolutely possible means maximum biology feeding. And biology, remember, is really what feeds us. So how biology feeds us, the plant feeds the biology feeds the plant with mineralization. Minerals, calcium, magnesium, zinc, phosphorus are rock deposits that exist within here. And that mineral will only be in that plant if there's an interaction down here with soil microorganisms. So we need to keep that cycling. So back to when we're talking about the most nutrient-dense foods are only the result of soil. This is how nutrition gets into this food. And then if we eat this food, how it gets into us. If animals eat this food, how the nutrition gets in animals. The phytonutrient richness or the ability to nourish are the fuel for our bodies. It's this soil biology down here that's the result of, that produces that and makes it exist within a plant substance. So it is, we feel for our production systems, it is just profound, it is just crucial that as we produce food, we enhance our biological asset. We cannot allow it to degrade. Then principle number 5 is if we incorporate animals, grazing animals, onto the landscape and graze, there's more diversity, there's biology feeding through the decomposition pathway where manure, urine, saliva decompose, plant matter decomposes as well and feeds soil biology through the decomposition pathway. That's one way soil biology is fed, but the main way is through the green carbon pathway. So we need to recognize that and run systems that really stimulate and drive that. So those are the principles of soil. So am I losing everybody so far? There's no questions, no?
No.
Are we going too deep? Are we?
No, it's all very interesting.
Okay.
So I have a question
And,
about
and we
the.
can if there's anybody here that disagrees with any of, like, definitely, like, let us know, we like discussion.
I have a question about the diversifying the plains. Really, we're in Alberta, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what is the process there? Is it solely waiting on nature to take its course, or do you take that extra hand and plant different varieties of seed, or?
Both of those would work. By default, nature would not accept a monoculture by default. So if it's left alone, there will be diverse mix of plant species that will, so the latent seed bank is loaded with seeds, even from like a long time back. Those seeds are sitting in the latent seed bank. If the conditions are right, the biological conditions are right for those seeds to germinate, they will germinate and that plant will grow. So by default, nature will just bring diversity back of plant species. So that is certainly a very good way. It'll happen very quickly. But you could also attempt to speed it up by spreading more seeds, spreading different seeds.
And so talking about building the soil deeper, right? With production of anything, time is of the essence. So do you find that more farmers try to do, plant their own seed instead of letting nature take its course? Because it does happen, but if we can speed it along, it will, like, using our own tools and things.
Nature would almost do it quicker.
Okay.
Nature would almost do it quicker, and nature will germinate the seed and of the plant that's needed to enhance the diversity in that patch.
Thank you very much.
So controlled grazing will, the diversity will just happen.
Okay.
A lot of the beauty of this system, we feel, Prairie Farm Foods feels, our group feels, this is a created system. It's created to function the way that it functions. And it is actually perfect in the way that it does function. Our role is to recognize how it is to function and then nurture it and caress it and use it and respectfully within its created order. And that's basically where these principles of soil health are from. Like, that's just how it was designed to work.
In the health of the grass and the soil, is there a role to be played by other non-cattle animals?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely, huge role. Any animal can have beneficial impact on a landscape, stewarded property across that landscape. But ruminant animals, grasses and forages are carbonaceous, like very carbonaceous plant material. Our digestive system could not live and function off of grasses and forages. We cannot digest grass and forage. The ruminant animal can. So we are a monogat, we are an omnivore digestive system. The ruminant animal it digests via fermentation. So it ferments what it eats into what it becomes. So that digestive system actually does very well with grasses and forages. It ferments the grasses and forages into what the beef becomes. So ruminant animals are just a key in this. Pork on the landscape, chicken on the landscape would work as well. They play a role, but they cannot live on grasses and forages. Those digestives cannot live on grasses and forages only. Pork is more a woodland animal. It's an omnivore. It needs seeds, it needs roots, it can eat on some grasses. Chicken, same thing, they're a gizzard. But certainly they play a role. But such a thing as a grass-fed pork shouldn't exist. You can't grass and forage finished pork. Neither would there be a benefit, neither would you want to. That's an omnivore digestive system. It is created for seeds. But with grass-fed being the buzzword over here, grass-fed chickens and turkeys and pork and pasture-raised, like pasture-raised for those proteins is like, that's real, that makes sense. That is a place. But the only meat that would be optimum if it was grass finished, are ruminant meat. Ruminants are bison, they're beef, they're deer, they're elk, they're moose.
Can I have a question? When we were young, we watched movies, the cowboy movies. They didn't want to have the sheep on there
Yeah.
because the farmers, the cow people didn't like it. What's the reason? Because they ate all of it?
I would say it was just simply lack of understanding. There is no reason. Sheep and cattle grazing together in the same field at the same time, intensive grazing is optimal. Like, it is, it's just optimal. On the cowboy, I'm not sure. I understand what you're saying, but I guess cowboys are special and sheep herders were not.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. They were killing each other, right?
Yeah. Okay, so so far where we're at, just so we're all kind of remain on the same page here. So we're looking for optimal nutrition. Nutrition comes from soil biology. So we're looking for a system that, as it's producing optimal nutrition, it can degrade on soil biology. It's not acceptable. It has to be building soil as it's producing nutrition, because soil is the nutrition producing mechanism. Okay, how do we produce healthy soil? What are we following? What does that even mean? If we boil that down to something that's doable, that's controllable, then that's where the principles of soil health come in. So the principles of soil health, okay, if we follow those and don't disregard those, we know we're heading in the right way with regenerating soils that are degraded, and if they're in a regenerated state, we'll sustain them in a regenerated state. And that would mean optimum nutrition produced, and also optimum amount of food per acre produced, and also optimum water cycling, water infiltration, water isn't running off. That all makes farms more resilient to dry weather events. Soils are biologically very alive, like a sponge, they hold a lot of water. So when it's dry, the rains don't come as timely. We're holding water within, there's all kinds of benefits from enhanced soil biology. Okay, so that's where we're at, and we're moving to recognizing that, so perennial and annual grasses and forages can be produced in a way that does not disregard any of the 5 principles of soil health, and they are the green carbon pathway of how soil microorganisms are nourished with CO2 and energy from the sun. So perennial grass would be a descriptive word for a plant that grows from its root system every year. In the winter it goes dormant, like the lawn out here, our lawns would be perennials, right? They grow from the roots every year. That's perennial, grass, and forage. Forage is just another word for, not every plant is a grass plant. Some plants are legumes, some plants are forbs, some plants are grasses. Forage is just a descriptive word that talks about all of them. So a perennial plant, again, it grows from the root system in the spring, goes dormant in the fall. Annual grasses and forages are plants that grow annually. In the spring, they grow from a seed germinating. And in the fall, they have seed again, and they're dropping seed again, and then that plant is dying off, the original plant, and next year, its progeny will grow from seed again. Is there a question? Okay. So with this slide, or at this stage, we're just recognizing that perennial and annual grass and forage plants can be produced in such a way that does not disregard any of the principles of soil health. It actually becomes fairly easy to do. Okay, so we understand grasses and forages can be produced and not disregard principles of soil health, but then we also understand grasses and forages do not feed people. They do not sustain. There's no food from grasses and forages. We can't digest it. Okay, but they are essential to be covering a landscape. Then we will move into, prairie ranchers recognize the value of the ruminant digestive tract. Now, the ruminant animal can graze and eat those grass and those forage plants and turn them into human food. The ruminant animal can do that. The ruminant animal digests via fermentation. So it ferments what it eats into human food or into beef, let's say. And then beef, definitely for the human diet, it can be a source of essential nutrients. Absolutely. So, as well on this slide, I think, I'd like to talk a bit about, so we recognize the value of that ruminant digestive tract. A unique component of the ruminant digestive tract. So, another name for a cow is they could also be called four-wheel drive solar-powered biodigesters. Really, that's what they are. So they're walking fermentation vats. So fermentation is the process of digesting, of anaerobic bacteria digesting organic matter. Anaerobic bacteria, so the opposite of oxygen, digesting organic matter. That's what's going on in that rumen. So if we're setting up biogas plants to produce biogas, we're basically mimicking a cow rumen. That's basically what how those plants operate. Now, the production of anaerobic bacteria, when anaerobic bacteria digest, they give off methane. It's a result of the digestion. As those anaerobic bacteria are working, digesting within that stomach, that animal is burping out methane. So methane are just a byproduct of anaerobic digestion. So in the case of biogas plants, we're looking for that methane because it's combustible. We burn it and we run engines with it. The beef produces methane. Beef's production produces methane, enteric methane, we term it. Now, methane is a greenhouse gas. So there's a lot of talk around, oh, greenhouse gas, it's too much of it in the atmosphere, and then we're going to burn up, and. So regardless of where we're at in our views on that, beef gets criticized a lot for its production of methane. It's a digestive system that produces methane. Pork doesn't produce methane. Its digestion doesn't. Chicken's digestion doesn't. Beef's digestion does. So beef are criticized for producing enteric methane. Plant will burn up because of cow farts. I hear that. So what I'd like to just point out in this, at this time within the slide, is that when we're considering that, we need to look at the whole picture. We can't just look at a narrow spectrum of the picture. So, enteric methane in the atmosphere, it breaks down into CO2 and to water. So it just in the atmosphere, it just breaks down into those components. The CO2 is sequestered again by the plants. The water falls to earth again as rain. And in order for the animal to digest, it's obviously got some type of matter in its stomach that it's digesting. So the matter that's in the animal's stomach, especially if that's grass and forage, would have sequestered multiple times more CO2 out of the atmosphere than the enteric methane that it's emitting as a result of the digestion. So enteric methane is, first of all, it's a recycling of methane. So the animal's giving it off, the plants are sequestering it. The animals are eating the plants and they're giving it off, and the plants are sequestering it. It's a recycling of methane. It's not new methane added to the environment, as is the case with fossil fuel. So fossil fuel, we're pulling from below the Earth's surface, oil or gas, we're burning it, we're doing what we need to do with it. It can add methane to the environment as well, but that is a new source of methane in the atmosphere. It's below the Earth and we've added it. In the case of beef, it's not a new source of methane, it's just a recycling of enteric methane. And the fact that beef produces proper beef grazing, the ruminant animal's digestive system, that stewarded properly produces so much more grass, and that amount of grass has the sequestration capacity that it has. It totally negates any enteric methane that would actually be given off by the digestion of beef. So there's a fair amount of research out on that. For the ones of you that are more interested in digging deeper on that, you can research that and just understand it a bit more.
I just have a quick question on kind of the marketing aspect of not changing, but educating the common consumer about, not branding the cow as you're ruining the atmosphere, right? Or changing the vernacular from slaughtering to, right? Using all those words, how has that, how did that change come about? When did it? What effects have you seen from it, from a marketing standpoint?
I guess so far, our brands have been run and they were born from a group of people that has always farmed and interacted with land and just wanting to do this well. So our brands at the moment, our production standards are a result of that. They come from that place, more than they come from a consumer demanding a certain thing. And also our brands and our company and operating at the level that we're operating at today, I'll just mention, we're also quite a young organization. And haven't, our efforts have gone into the development of harvest capacity, the development of standards and the creation of a supply chain of beef. We haven't to date put a lot of effort into marketing simply because it hasn't been the thing to do yet in the journey of on the course of our journey with Prairie Farm Food. So, but we're all about wanting to do the right thing, like really genuinely, first of all, what is the right thing? And then, yes, let's participate and walk and do the right thing, which boils back to nutritious food at the end of the day. That's what it's at. And then soyology becomes so important because that's what makes nutritious food. Nothing else in the world does. And then just telling that story. And I mean, that's what we're about. That's what our brands are about. That's what Prairie Farm Food is about. That's what we live and breathe every day and spend our time and effort on. That's our purpose. It's our mission. But there's a lot of work to be done in, like there's just some messaging out there that's, and I guess the overarching thing too here, the overarching thing is, it's not the cow, it's the how. It is a phrase that was coined by, I believe it was Diana Rogers. She's from Boston. She's a dietitian. There's a film out called The Sacred Cow that talks about regenerative agriculture practices. So it's not the cow, it's the how. So we can steward beef production in a direction that I couldn't confidently say that it sequesters more than it omits. I couldn't confidently say that is the most nutrient-dense food that beef could be. I couldn't confidently say that it produces soil, it enhances soil biology as it's grown. But there is a way of producing beef, we're finding and we're learning and we're pioneering, that we can with a lot of confidence say, yes, this is the most nutritious food. Yes, this produces soil biology as we produce it. And yes, we are sequestering huge amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere. This is a real carbon sink as we're producing food. See, but it's how we interact with producing beef. It's not the beef, it's how we interact, it's how we steward it. So that is kind of Prairie Farm Foods' story and mission and vision.
Awesome.
You had a question?
Yeah, just a question on, I like the idea of the sequestering of the methane and the science on that. But for grass-fed beef, how much more acreage is required for those cows on the farms for the harvesting?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. That's one of grass-fed beef's criticisms. It's out there. Okay, so I'll take you through a little bit of math. So we'll need a little bit of math. So our farm, Pioneer Farms, which produces the grass-fed beef, we've produced a lot of grain-fed beef. We simply have, we've decided to move our production systems into the grass and forage finished production methods for some of the reasons that I've just explained, but we have a lot of experience with grain-fed beef. So the acres that we take and we grow grass and forage, we can take those acres and we can decide, no, we won't finish beef on grass and forage, we'll finish beef on grain. So we'll take those acres and now we need to establish grain crops. We need to establish a barley crop. Barley is the predominant grain that beef is finished on in North America, in Alberta. Okay, so now we need to establish a barley crop. So we would plow that field, we'll get it to where that barley crop will germinate and grow barley. And then we grow barley. So we grow around 100 bushels of barley. That's a high yielding barley crop in this country. And each bushel would weigh 50 pounds. So we would producing, high yielding barley crop would be 5,000 pounds of barley produced per acre per growing season in Alberta. Any farmer would agree, that's a very high yielding crop. We get that crop, we're happy. Okay, and then we would convert that barley into beef at a conversion rate of 8:1. So an as-fed conversion rate of 8:1. So without the use of antibiotics and growth hormone, a conversion rate of 8:1 is a very efficient beef conversion rate. 8:1. So we take 5,000 pounds of barley divided by a conversion rate of 8:1 is 625 pounds of beef produced per acre's worth of barley. Okay, so we could do that. Or we could leave it in grass and forage, and then, so we're comparing finishing stages at this point. I'm comparing finishing, so we barley finish or we forage finish. Like upstream cow-calf production is best on perennial forages. Okay, so now we'll compare forage finishing. How much beef per acre do we produce on forage finishing? That's what we're trying to figure out here. So on that same acre, in that same year, with that amount of moisture per year, we would produce a 12-ton forage crop. From perennial forages, we produce a 12-ton crop, 2,000 pounds per ton. So that's 24,000 pounds of forage. 12 2,000-pound tons, not tons, like tons, T-O-N, so imperial. On the beef side, for some reason, they talk imperial. So anyway, where on the barley, we produce 5,000 pounds of barley, converted into beef at 8:1. We're using the same acre. We're now producing 12 ton of forage, which are normal forage crops for our system. So that's 12 2,000-pound ton. That's 24,000 pounds of forage. And then we now convert that forage into beef at 20:1, not 8:1. When barley, we take 8 pounds of barley to produce a pound of beef. Forage, we take 20 pounds of forage to produce a pound of beef. So we seem less efficient. The reason we're less efficient is because with forage, we have carbonaceous plant material, stalk, stem, leaf, that we're digesting into beef, where with barley, it's a seed we're digesting into beef. So with forage, we're less efficient. We seem less efficient at this point. Our conversion rate is 20:1 versus 8:1. So again, 24,000 pounds of forage divided by the conversion rate of 20:1 gives us 1,200 pounds of beef produced per acre per growing season on a forage finishing ration, versus 625 pounds of beef produced per acre per growing season on our barley ration.
So it's actually more efficient.
Those are industry numbers for yields on these crops. Any operator would recognize them. So I'll say this, we have the capacity to produce actually twice the amount of beef per acre on grasses and forage, finishing with grasses and forages versus finishing with barley. And grasses and forages we can grow without violating any of the principles of violating is maybe too strong a word, without disregarding any of the principles of soil health. We can grow grasses and forages fairly easily. So that means we're enhancing and keeping in enhanced state our biological resource. On the barley side, our farm has really struggled to grow barley without disregarding most of the 5 principles of soil health. So we need to accept that, okay, we can grow barley, we do it this way, we end up with yield, we get but we need to accept that we are degrading biologically. And we are, at best, sustaining in a degraded state on the barley side. And earlier in the conversation we talked about nutrition comes from soil biology. So nutrition coming from soil biology, barley grown in soils that are biologically not enhanced, the nutrient density or the nutrition of that food, and this is easy to test. The nutrition of that food is not as optimal as it could be if that soil was eaten. But that is a comment that very commonly we get, that is, and we pay close attention to that. Like we run farms, we run businesses, it has to work dollars and cents wise, or else we're not here for very long. We're planning to be here intergenerational. But as well, I'll add to that, we produce forage finished beef. We'll get to that later in the slide. But we produce forage finished beef successfully by, it takes the right genetic, the right genotype of beef, and it takes high energy forage programs. So that needs to be understood by producers that are doing it. Any more questions on the ruminant?
Got one right
Just one question on, excuse me, on seeding, obviously barley you have to seed every year, and how many years do you get out of a crop of grass?
Grass and forage, when proper grazing, you could actually have that go on
Forever.
almost forever, because it grows from its seeds. But what ends up happening with these fields is you have rodents move in, and you have damage like that is probably best at every 10 years, even though you're disregarding a principle of soil health. You plow it, you build a lot of biology, you plow it, you level it, you do what you need to do with it, and then put it back into, for a few years, do stored forage crops from it, and then put it back into grass. Okay, so with this slide, we're trying to point out, so the goal of Prairie Ranchers Beef Program is not to produce manufacturing beef, not to produce beef for grinding. We're attempting to produce a beef product here that eats as well as anything out there. And in Alberta, we're used to Alberta beef, Alberta green finished beef. There's absolutely nothing wrong with how it tastes. It is exceptional beef. So we ask ourselves, okay, the bar has been set for texture and flavor for beef in Alberta. If we can meet that, we're happy. We're not setting up to exceed that. There's nothing that needs to be fixed with how Alberta beef tastes. What we're asking ourselves is, okay, yes, it tastes excellent, it's done excellent, but you know what? Are we stewarding that resource in the right direction, or can we be doing this different? So breasts and forages are inherently less dense in energy per mouthful, and in order for an animal to fatten, it needs to consume X amount of kilocalories of energy per day, or else it doesn't fat. So you need to supply a lot of energy to the animal, and you're supplying it with a feed source that's less dense in energy per mouthful. Okay, so how we combat that, what we need to focus on is we need to produce forages that are optimized for energy growth and harvested at the optimum energy time of the year. And we need to work with genotypes of beef, genetics of beef that basically, when we boil it back, that have a higher relative feed intake. So we need beef that can eat a lot per their body weight, so that we end up with intaking enough energy to actually fat and deposit the intramuscular fat, which leads to enhanced eating experience and flavor and texture. We all understand that good beef needs to be marbled. So that's, we can't emphasize these two areas, like we can't emphasize this enough. And then back to the conversation we had regarding beef produced per acre. If we're not using the right genotype of beef, we're not successful in producing beef per acre off the forage. And the reason there's not more of this type of production going on hasn't been more in Alberta, I would say, is the vast majority of animals out there, beef genetics out there, are geared towards doing well in a green finishing system. So if you're selecting animals that do well in a green finishing system, you're inadvertently selecting the animals that do for sure not so well in a grass finishing system. You're inadvertently selecting for animals that they're less efficient actually. Because these very efficient forage animals, if you feed them grain, they're smaller carcass weights and they will be overfat because you're supplying them way more energy than what they actually need. So that has to be recognized by any producer that wants to produce optimum beef with breasts and forages. So from here we can go into the different stages of beef production, just to make sure we all understand that. So beef production, there's 3 stages. We have the cow-calf stage, the yearling stage, and the fattening stage. So cow-calf stage, you basically got a mother herd of cows producing a calf a year. So that stage will graze on perennial forages for a year. The calves are born in the spring, they're weaned in the fall. The calves would then be fed on stored forages over the winter. And then this stage of production, a calf would be from birth to about 700 pounds of weight. That's a year.
Sorry, I missed that if you just said it. When do you typically calve?
Spring of the year. So we're calving now.
March, April?
No.
A little bit later?
Later.
Okay.
Yeah, later. Some producers could calve as early as March, April, like it is possible. You just adjust that with breeding season.
Right about now.
Our farm the Pioneer Farm calves now on the green grass out on pasture. These cows just do their thing. They're on their own. Second stage of beef production is the yearling stage. Okay, so we've got these calves that were born last year. They were with mom on grass last year. They were in pens on stored forage over the winter. And then when the grass season starts, right about now, the yearling stage goes out onto grass and are grazed following an intensive grazing model, where with electric fence, we will move them daily or every second day. You mow them quite tight, you get them to eat a piece, and then you just keep moving them. And then not allow them to come back to what allowing the forage enough time to rest and recover, the plant enough time to rest and recover. So that method stimulates a lot of forage growth per acre, which stimulates then a lot of beef produce per acre, which has a like a positive environmental impact, yes, but also economic impact. You're making that biological resource more productive. So yearling stage, and then yearling stage would be, the weight of the animals in this stage would be about from 700 pounds to 1,000 pounds. So 1,000 pounds, the animals, the frame's developed and it's ready for it to go onto high energy forage rations to start fattening within the yearling stage. The next stage of production basically is the fattening stage. So fatteners or finishers are in a pen type setting and delivered high energy forage rations. So they're consuming X amount of kilocalories of energy per day, and that will contribute to, you've got the skeletal structure developed, you need to lay a lot of meat on that bone is the goal, and to deposit a lot of intramuscular fat and give us some fat, like some exterior fat cover as well.
The fattening process, what's in it?
Forage. Okay, so forage is the word that includes grasses, forbs, legumes, and then stored forage. So we would store forage. So we've got growing grasses, right? So growing grasses. Yeah. Central Alberta has 6 to 7 months of the year of growing grasses. So
is that what you roll up? These bundles you see
yes.
on the field?
Yes. So what stored forage is, so we store forage via natural dehydration and it becomes hay. Or we store forage via natural fermentation and it becomes silage. So the dehydration or the fermentation is a method of preserving that forage. You cut it during the grazing season, you prune back, you cut during the grazing season, but you need to store for the off-grazing season. So in the off-grazing season, the animals are eating silage or hay.
So this stuff is a year old, right?
Yeah, that would be from the previous years. So on the bus tour on the farm later today, after lunch, we will be looking at stored forages and just discussing that and going to the pens and how forage is supplied. But the thing to remember here, this is forage that these animals are eating. It's in its stored state, but it is forage still. There's two reasons on why we produce stored forage. So one reason is we need feed for this 5-6 months of off-grazing season, and we need feed to fatten with. That is one reason we need forage for. The second reason we produce forage is during the peak growing season of the year, a forage plant very early in the season, it'll go to seed. Once it goes to seed, it is mission accomplished for the plant, and it starts to shut down and it stops growing, but there's still a lot of season left. But once it's gone to seed, it's done what it was designed to do. But if you prune it back by cutting it and rolling it up and siling it, you are stimulating more forage growth. That pruning practice stimulates then more forage growth. So on one hand, we have to do stored forage, so we keep pruning back and stimulating more forage growth via pruning. And on the other hand, it's really good that we need to do the stored forage because, we get 5 to 6 months where not a lot grows, where quite 40 below, but we're quite open, we're under a few feet of snow. And we've still got these animals around, they need to be fed. So is that clear?
Yeah, kind of. Is there any animal fat at all in the fattening stage?
Animal fat?
Animal fat.
Fat?
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
No, it's all natural forage.
Yeah, yeah. They're 100%, these animals are like 100%, not 100% of their ration, but 99% of their ration, 98% of their ration is forage, like is stored grass. The other 2% are vitamin mineral supplement that they're supplying.
And that stored grass, it doesn't lose any nutritional value because it's dry, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. So in the food industry, we'd all understand shelf stable. So shelf stable via like water activity reduction. Beef jerkies, salamis, they're shelf stable via water activity reduction. That's what's happening with hay. We all understand shelf stable via fermentation. Salamis, cheese, fermented milk, fermented meat, wine. So silage is is stored forage with its nutrient value preserved because of the fermentation process that it's going through. We'll show you like bunkers of where this silage is stored and how it's done. We'll just chat about that on the bus trip.
Is there a selection process? Do you reduce, your herd a little bit, your animals from yearling to fattening? Do you sort them a little bit at that point, or are you successful in growing your yearlings, and do they all go to fattening?
They would all go to fattening.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is different qualities of cattle. Some would go to fattening and they'd be more efficient, they'd fat quicker. Some would take a bit more feed. There's just natural variation amongst animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, some being more efficient, others being not so, do you have separate pens for those fattenings where you start out and you're, okay, this one's really efficient, put them in this one so we know? Or is that, how is that kind of?
Usually not. I mean, there's a bit of that going on. Usually they're together. They are what they are.
Okay.
We sort animals for slaughter via reading the finish on them, when the industry we call it like reading the finish. So you're looking visually at the animal. For instance, the brisket. So the brisket is between the front legs on a live animal.
Mm-hmm.
The brisket is one of the last places the animal starts to deposit fat in. If you know it's brisket starting to fatten up, the rest of the parts are fat enough. So around the tail head, you're looking for fat there. So the animals are not selected for slaughter by weight, but via reading finish.
Okay.
Finish means fat deposited.
Yeah.
Because that's our goal here. Our goal here is to, like, that animal to lay maximum amount of meat on its skeletal structure, maximum amount that it is genetically capable of, with the right amount of fat, cover and intramuscular fat.
Okay.
When it reaches 30 months and all that, will be slaughtered no matter what, won't it?
Sorry.
When it reaches, the animal reaches the age of 30 months, 31 months, isn't it?
Yes, yeah,
And it will be slaughtered?
yeah, they could be.
Because
Normally we
means
go.
You cannot export it past that age in the state?
You can, but so at 30 months, you're classed as an OTM, basically meaning over 30-month animal. So there's regulations that CFIA implemented in 2001 when Canada had a BSE case.
Right.
So where the 30 months is from is, so BSE is bovine spongiform empathy, so it's a prion that can exist within certain parts of that animal's anatomy. But scientifically, it's been said that the animal would need to live longer than 30 months for that prion to exist in certain parts of its anatomy, like in its brain and its spinal column or its distal ileum. So in the industry, every animal that goes for slaughter, these animals have birth certificates or they're mouthed. So there's a dental check done to determine its age. If it's determined to be over 30 months, we have to call it OTM. And on OTM animals, we dispose of the distal ileum, which is a part of the intestine, the spinal cord, and the brain separately. It actually becomes classed as SRM, specified risk material. So we need to make sure it's removed from the carcass, and we make sure it's disposed via SRM protocol.
Will it be tested? It's taken for a fact that it will be discarded no matter what. Like, I mean, when you...
No, it's not, it wouldn't be tested. It's just,
Standard.
It's standard, and basically the standards, how the standards were born is, okay, this animal has lived for long enough for this prion to possibly be there. So we're gonna assume that it's there, and we're going to dispose of via an approved method.
How many cows do you harvest a year?
Around 14, for this program, we'll do about 1,400 a year, so 50 to 60 animals bi-weekly.
So when
Just the size of the
when you
program.
say bi-weekly, that means do you artificially inseminate this process?
No,
Or
this is naturally bred.
naturally bred, eh? What do you mean?
Some-
They should have a good time.
Some animals are older at slaughter, some animals are younger at slaughter. So the animals are all born within a few months, all born in the spring. They're all born in the spring. Some are harvested at 22 months, 23 months, and some are harvested at 30 months, 32 months. So we need to stretch the harvesting across the year because our distributors and distributors' customers need fresh meat weekly.
So are you supplementing your plant production with other kinds of grain-fed beef?
Yes.
Okay.
These other brands we talked about earlier.
And so what's your actual production weekly through your plant? How many
Lunch
head?
production weekly through the plant of a large animal would be around 200 head. 200 head of large animals. So sometimes it's pork. Some weeks, bi-weekly it's pork. So pork, 5 pork is equivalent to 1 large animal. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
For bison, similar stages for production cycles?
Bison, completely honest with you, I'm not that familiar with bison production. We don't produce, but I would say similar for sure.
So bison you just put through the facility?
As
prepare-
custom harvest for another brand.
Is your slaughter facility capable of halal slaughtering or?
It would be capable of halal slaughter, yes. We don't, it's not licensed for halal, it's not certified for halal slaughterable at this point in time.
It's simply because like in the past year or two, it became like imperative at our work. We have about 48,000 students, 12,000 employees, and nowadays everything is halal.
Yeah,
Risk gets
I understand
high.
that. I understand that. It's fairly easy for, the certification process for a facility like ours would be fairly easy to do. At this point in time, we haven't made the discussion. So if we summarize here, we're gonna get to the end of our Prairie Ranchers discussion. So in summary, the key takeaway points would be the nutrient density or the nutrition of the food, its mineralization. We need to understand it's just very closely related to the biological health of that soil. It's very closely related to it's the biological health of that soil, just the microorganisms living within that soil organic matter. That is the mechanism that produces nutrition.
You guys have used nitrogen to boost your, the health of your grass?
Yeah, we use nitrogen all the time. All the time. But there's a, let me finish this. Sorry. Let me back up. This is what I was looking for. So we use nitrogen all the time. Our grass constantly needs nitrogen. So for every acre of grass, if we go into the atmosphere above that acre, there's thousands of times more nitrogen than our grass could ever need. And we only give that nitrogen to our plant, our microbes down here that need that nitrogen constantly. Plants don't grow without nitrogen. Nitrogen is CO2, carbon dioxide. The only way it gets from the atmosphere down here is through this green living pathway. So that is the way that we have found that is the most cost-effective way of getting that nitrogen out there, down there. And then we've also heard that apparently there's too much of it up here. We need a lot of it sequestered out, so it really helps there as well. But that's back to, but your question is more nitrogen fertilizer. Finite fossil fuel derived nitrogen fertilizer. That we try and, our grain crops, yes, that's used, but on our forage crops, we don't need to use that. The reason we don't need to use that is we've got this system cycling that will sequester from the atmosphere what's needed. See, that would be agriculture's goal. If agriculture could produce food without finite, like we gotta underline that we're a finite resource here with fossil fuels. And chemical nitrogen is a result of natural gas. Like nitrogen is a result of natural. So if we can grow food from the elements, and that's how this system was created to work. We can't do that. It's just a recognizing of it, and it's a stewarding it in the right direction. So nutrition is from soil biology. Soil biology is a result of following 5 principles of soil health, minimizing to not paying attention to those principles. Perennial and annual forage crops can be produced without disregarding the 5 principles of soil health. See, this is key. Perennial and annual forage crops we can produce easily without disregarding the principles of soil health. It's not difficult at all. With grain crops, by contrast, grain crops is a different story. Grain crops, barley crops, for beef production, a barley crop, we haven't found a way to successfully do that without disregarding some or all of the principles. Ruminant animal was created to digest perennial grass and forages. That's just that. We need to recognize the value of that ruminant. It can digest earth healers. The plant are the soil and the earth healers. The beef can digest the soil and the earth healers and turn them into human food. The plants are not digestible for us. The main thing here. Food products derived from harvest of ruminant animals are a source of essential nutrition for humans. Across the board on all meats, my opinion would be, according to research that I've done, and my personal opinion would be that I would say beef is superior as an essential source of nutrients for humans compared to other meat sources. Other farm meat sources especially. I think beef would be right up there as the greatest amount of nutrition for humans. And then at the end of the day, this model that we're pioneering, that we're running, that we're essential, our experience have shown us that we can produce at significant scale food with exceptional nutrition and nutrient value. And the production system, it has the potential that we prove it to ourselves, it has the potential to improve environmental impact, sequester more CO2 from the atmosphere, build more soil biology. And the model of producing this way, especially with direct marketing involved, the whole model can be economically sustainable. So it can go on intergeneration.
Can I ask you one more question? Angus, so you're specializing in Angus beef, or do you have Holstein and other breeds as well? No.
We would specialize in the genotype and the type of animal that would be the best forage converter. See, the Holstein animal was selected from the dairy industry, so it's been selected over the years to turn feed and energy that it eats into milk. The Holstein animal is a bad forage converter in comparison to other animals. They're very, very inefficient forage converter. There's not a lot of meat per bone on the Holstein animal. The Holstein animal can be finished well, absolutely. It's an exceptional eating experience, but it's inefficient, especially with low energy forage rations. It's very inefficient to produce.
So
So it
Angus
would not
is
be
the prime
selected.
for you, right?
Angus is one of the British breeds. So beef breeds there's the exotic breeds and then there's the British breeds. So British breeds are Hereford, Red Angus, Black Angus, those types of breeds. They're smaller framed, easier fleshing, more efficient. And then we work with breeders of animals that select from forage finishing systems. So you basically expose the animals to the environment that the progeny will be exposed to. The animals that do best in that environment, you select those, and those animals are your breeding. So that's how through natural selection, you're selecting for certain traits.
Thank you.
Angus ends up being just a breed that there's been a lot of work done on selecting it in this direction. So we're actually mostly Angus, but we don't sell Angus as Angus. Like our program is not breed specific. It is forage like AAA beef from breast and forage specific. And Angus does the best job of that.
What do you do with the skin of the cow?
Skin, the hides,
Yeah.
they would go for leather production, so they can be salted, and they would go for leather production. If the demand for hides for leather is there and pays enough to justify the salting process. If they're not, if the demand for leather is not there, they would be composted. So for the meat plant, for Prairie Farm Foods plant, all of the inedible, so any of the material from the slaughter or from the cutting that is not sold for human consumption, the industry return that as inedible. It is all composted. So it's composted, so compost is anaerobic bacteria, aerobic bacteria, so oxygen-loving bacteria, digestion of organic matter. So we would take guts, blood, bones, whatever's not sold, most bones are sold, we mix it with carbonaceous material of straw, of wood chips, we lay it out on a windrow, and we would just allow that digestion to completely turn it into topsoil. And then that topsoil goes out onto acres, onto land as a soil amendment, and just grows more grass and more beef, and it's very circular. Thank you.
Oh, yes, yeah, I have a quick question.
That's it.
One more question.
I understand what hay is, or dried out, what's fermented food, or like how do you ferment hay?
So you cut it, so you're cutting it, cut it in the windrow. You let that windrow wilt to about a moisture level of between 50 and 65% moisture level. You just pick it up with a large machine, with a silage chopper, chops it into short, and just blows it right onto a truck. So it's fairly wet. The trucks haul it home, dump it into a large concrete bunker, and just really compact it in. So just compact it into, compress all the air out of it. Huge pile of silage, and then it's covered with a plastic film, plastic kept down to keep all the oxygen out of it. And then it ensiles, what's termed as ensiles. So it goes through a fermentation process where bacterial action would, lactobacillus strains of bacteria would basically stabilize, would grow and take over and stabilize and keep out any other bacteria. It's fermentation. So fermentation equals pH drop. With pH drop, it's also more acidic. So more acidic also, that's not an environment for spoilage bacteria to take over and spoil it.
So it's not like a hay slop or something, it's pretty dry.
No, it's very, it looks exactly like,
It
looks exactly like what's in this bunk. This is 100% inside. Yeah, you can. It smells, it has a really funky fermented smell to it. There's nothing wrong with it. No, could you digest it?
No, there's nothing wrong with it, actually. There was some seeds.
Yeah.
And she was fat in the meeting, especially there was some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we give another round of applause. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
But I would like to
Excellent. Thank you very much, folks, for coming in and learning more about Prairie Farm Foods and about our meat brands, our beef brands. We're happy to have you, excited to have you, and we're looking forward to a very interactive conversation. So I've prepared a few slides that will help us present Prairie Farm Foods, who Prairie Farm Foods is, and our business model to you. And then also some slides that I prepared that will help you learn our beef program, the Prairie Ranchers USA beef program. What I'm looking forward to and really hoping we can achieve here is just an interactive conversation regarding beef production and processing. We're very interested in finding out what it is that you are interested in and speaking to what you are interested in. I'd like it to, the presentation to take on that stuff. Instead of me just feeding you with a bunch of information that you may be interested in. Please give me lots of questions and lead the conversation.
Tim, if I may, I guess I'll introduce us a little bit as an organization, as a group, and then sort of give you that, get the conversation going.
We certainly could, and then my next move was introducing the Prairie Farm Foods team.
Okay. Yeah, this is the group participating in an annual Canadian Culinary Federation Conference. It happens once per year in a different city, in a location across Canada. And so over the last few days, we've been engaged in learning in sessions and activities. We had a presentation around wild foods and wild places. We talked about mental health. We had some conversation around mental health in industry. We had, what else did we do? We had competitions and anything else, breakout sessions, a trade show environment where brands were represented, so brands of Canadian, or Canadian, even also Canadian food products from across Canada were presenting their products in the showcase to the chefs. So a pretty involved program, a group of people that are very focused on learning about food, where it comes from, the benefits, the attributes, the sellable features that we can better understand how to present products to guests and to our staff and our teams.
Excellent. Excellent. I think the group's interests are definitely a fit for that would be interested in learning about Prairie Farm Foods and about Pine Haven Farms and about our food production methods and the process in reverse. We started with the cleanest end from a hygiene perspective, like the cleanest end of a process. We're walking in reverse. So we're walking from cuts of meat towards light animal. So this zone of hygiene here is for carcasses on the slaughter floor. So when carcasses enter this room through the rail, the hide, anything on the exterior of the hide is all been removed. So we call this the hide off kill floor. So what happens here is the operators on these stationary platforms, and you've got multiple carcasses of beef on the line. This operator eviscerates, so he takes all the intestines out, drops them into this shelf that pushes out on the bottom. This goes out and dumps them, so the intestines go out. This operator splits the carcass, and then the CFIS platform, where they're inspecting every carcass, every set of viscera. And then we have trimming platforms on the end, where we're trimming any visible contamination, like a piece of hair, anything like that. And then the carcass goes into a lactic acid wash. Lactic acid is an antimicrobial, so it would reduce potential spoilage bacteria on the surface of the carcass. The lactic acid wash would, and then into coolers. The carcasses go into coolers, and they're positioned so they're not touching. And the coolers are designed and set up so the carcasses chill very quickly. We dry the surface and just chill the meat down and get it out of critical temperatures and chill. And after chilling, after those carcasses, the carcasses are removed from the other side of the coolers into that room that we just viewed. And then upstream from here, which we'll see from the other side, is the hide on slaughter floor. So the way the plan works, the crew would do slaughter one week, and we would do fabricate carcasses and final cuts a different week. So at this point in time, we're not running both sides at the same time. This plant's business model is diversified between species, pork and bison, diversified between custom work and our own brand. So it's more a specialized process in that regard than these larger packing plants specialize and are really efficient by just double shifting, triple shifting.
Yeah.
We don't double, triple shift. Our market demand is more for specialty and for multi-species.
So it's two groups, right? One is
same crew. Everybody's cross-trained. Like the people that work in here they're trained for multiple positions within here. So if there's an absentee or if somebody's stepping off for break, it will always, so the line can continue.
Does it work 7 days a week or only 5 days a week? 5.
5 days a week. 5 days a week and actually purposely shorter production shifts.
Okay.
So there's some of us that have 8-hour production shift days, but most of us have more 5-hour production shift days because we have other farm tasks in animal production and in maintenance that they're managing as well, making it work out. And the crew that works the facility is the majority of the people that manage and operate the facility are community members, which are owner-operators basically of the facility. This is their facility. So there's just this vested interest approach that
don't get anywhere
people
else.
just give it just a lot of effort. And then part of our team, we also have 8 or 10 folks that are hired that are not part of the community, that are employees of Prairie Farm Foods that work these processes as well. Was there anybody else that didn't see, or were all in? Are we all? So it's for animal holding, it'll hold beef or bison or pork. It's after production, it's cleaned like to this level. But behind there's handling facilities that will move the animals into what's called the restraining box. So the restraining box is right behind the yellow or the green. In the case of beef and bison, that's the restraining box. So animals are moved into the restraining box, one animal at a time. In the restraining box, there's a neck lift and a head lift and a neck restraint to restrain the head, and then they're stung via captive bolt. So through a explosive device within something that looks like a firearm, it'll shoot out. It'll put against the animal's head and it'll shoot out a bolt and then retract it. So it's a bolt basically penetrating the brain, causing irreversible damage. So in that instant, the animal turns from an animal into a piece of meat. It's done very humanely. CFIA's regulations put a huge amount of emphasis on animal welfare, almost more emphasis on animal welfare than there is on food safety. There is no physical possible way to do these processes any more humane. The receiving of the animal, the moving it through the knocking box, and then after the knocking box, we're not dealing with an animal anymore. The person doing the knocking is trained to test for sensibility. So the eyeball test, reflexes that control the eye are some of the last reflexes that we lose, that any organism loses. So if you try and figure to an eyeball, gives you reflex, you know there's brain injury. So he's trained on how to stun, where to stun, how to check. Very, very rigorous processes. I just want to point that out and show because
that being such a morbid job, does that person will rotate throughout, or is that the same person?
It actually ends up being the same person with the training. So it's like if you understand what's being done and you understand why it's being done very responsibly and properly, it just takes that component away from it. But we all have different levels of sensitivity to those types of things. Absolutely, that exists. It's a process that just needs to happen. The process that we explained about the role that foragers play, the role that animals play, the fact that humanity needs food. It's just the big picture needs to be considered.
To my knowledge, the USDA in the United States requires that person to rotate every 30 minutes. As crazy as it sounds.
I wasn't aware of that. I'm not sure why that is. But
they require that particular position to rotate in a certain, within an hour, that person will be off and doing something else, whatever the reason may be.
It could stem from some of these plants that do very large volumes. It could be a situation of just operator fatigue happening, and then the effectiveness of the job lacking as a result. Would really be the only thing I can think of on why that would be the case. So the animal's stunned, It's shackled, a chain around the leg, it's hoisted to the rail. The first step that has to be done is the blood has to be drained. So there's blood within the vascular system, so that the veins have to be cut, the blood is drained. And then there's a series of hoof cutters and horn cutters to remove those parts from the animal. Keeping in mind, we're dealing with a carcass, we're not an animal anymore, we were an animal 5 minutes ago. Like we have to, this carcass looks like an animal, but it's not an animal, it's a carcass. Okay? And then the next step is the hind legs are skinned, the joint exposed, and then onto the rail. Second hind leg is skinned, and then we've got a carcass that's got the hind leg skinned up on a rail. The next platform will open the skin on the front, start peeling that skin back. The next platform will leg the bung. The bung is the arsehole. Sorry for the crude language, but we then know what we're talking about. So as we're eviscerating, pulling that eviscera out, the eviscera is tube to the mouth, the intestines, and a tube out the arsehole. All of that needs to come out in one contained piece. Nothing can be ruptured, because the rupturing of that gets intestinal content, which is contamination that needs to be trimmed. So on the bung, it's loosened, it's cut, the tube is cut, and then it's bagged. So there's a bag put on it, and if you're pulling on the intestine, you squeeze out the back of that bung, it's contained in that bag, so it's not contaminated. Suppose this is like that happened. Bagging the bung, and then next step would be pulling the hide. So the last step before it goes into that room would be the hide's loosened on the front, and there's just a machine that would just pull it off the back. And then the carcass is completely clean on the outside, so it's entering then a greater level of hygiene, a cleaner level of hygiene. So it's entering into that room. People that would have worked on skinning an animal with a contaminated hide are not touching or going near that animal again. They are in green, dark green attire, and they work this area only. If they're breaking lunch break, they're up in their break room and down. So even on breaks, people that work in different zones don't go in for reasons of hygiene. Air in the facility is dropped in on the cleanest end. Air is filtered, heated, or cooled slightly, dropped in, and then it's exhausted and released to the clean end of the facility, which we test the barn. So you've always got air moving with a lot of velocity when your system's on this way. And the carcasses are getting cleaner. Basically what this process is doing, it's separating all those from hygiene when you clean from, as you're progressing, unclean is falling away and moving outside. The clean is continuing on. It's kind of how the process works, because there's, within this animal's digestive system, beef and with pork, there's bacteria within that digestive system that plays a role in the digestion, but that can be pathogenic potentially to humans. In the case of beef, E. coli 0157887 is something that all plants need to look out for. So E. coli is feces bacteria. 0157887 is one strain of that bacteria that gives off a toxin to try and insulate itself to stay alive. That toxin, if humans with compromised immunity ingest enough of it, it can cause illness. So we're always on the lookout for that, because the very animal organization that we're bringing the meat in on, the value in on, is also, we've also got potential pathogenic bacteria riding in on that stand. So that's just what the meat industry has to deal with.
The blood in the intestines just go compost?
They go compost. So blood would be collected in this collection room here as it's coming off, and then it's just pumped via a pump to the inedible room. So there's a room off to the side. That part will go into the containers, and then from there it's just transported to compost, to turn, just to compost it back in the soil. Okay. So that takes care of, like, from slaughter right through the fed. We can scoot into the production area as a phase 2 if we wish. Are we running out of time? Okay, so Arvind, we are probably running out of time. Arvind, can somebody find Arvind, please?